Board of Supervisors. We'll begin by standing and pledging to our flag. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a few housekeeping reminders to discuss real quickly. Township video record of meetings will post on its website. And how quickly are they put up on the website?
It all depends when they get edited and when they get back to me and so forth. So we try to get them as soon as we can. March is just one on today.
It's good. So it's the entire meeting. Next, you all have a right to record meetings, but you must announce that fact at the beginning of the meeting. And finally, it's appreciated and helpful if you use the microphone to address the board. And also at that time, state your name and address so we have it on record. All right? Thank you for your indulgence with that. We'll start the informal meeting by approval of minutes. You all have a copy. You want a chance to look at the draft. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the March meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is the treasurer's report dated March 2015. You had a chance to review that. I'll entertain a motion to approve that report.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 You also have a copy of the budget and action report. We don't have to approve that, it's just there for information. What that does, if you're up there, it indicates how much money has been allocated or rather budgeted for a particular item. And then next to it is how much we've spent so far this year. So we keep tabs on how we're doing as far as our spending is concerned. Now we move on to opening public comment. Anybody ready to say either negative or positive or indifference? We accept all three. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah. I didn't. Susquehanna High School, they're recording these meetings, and it doesn't cost us anything, but it's a great service to the public. I acknowledge that. Ordinances and resolutions. Todd.
There's nothing this month.
Okay. Subdivision and land development. Midsummer Manor.
This is just a formality. It's authorizing the township to sign and submit the DEP sewage planning model for Midsummer Manor, which you recall is the actually 6-lot subdivision adjacent to Windy Hill Park. And there'll be 5 building lots, and that 1.5 acre, 3/4 will be dedicated to the township.
The gentleman that's developing that property is dedicating, or rather giving to the township about 1.5 acres as part of his site, which will connect a link as far as the extension of Elm Drive. You know, Elm Drive starts over on East Forest and then comes over, and then it dead ends. But there's been talk, eventually maybe we'll extend it up to connect to maybe the state road is going to connect it to. Windy Hill Road, yes. So this will provide us, if in the future we want to extend the road up to Windy Hill, we can do that. Okay, next item.
We'll need a motion.
Yeah, excuse me. We need a motion and a second to approve the sewage module.
So moved.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Vote aye.
Now this is just updates our sewage plan, what it does.
Correct. Correct.
So we have to approve that. Let's vote on it.
We did.
Okay,
I'll wait on you.
aye.
Aye.
Sorry. My mind is going 6-0 directions. Maybe I should bring it in a little bit. All right, the next item. Reports, we'll start with our manager, Todd Ziegler.
Two things just to bring to your attention. The capital projects that we had talked about for 2015, which was the resurfacing of Mount Airy Road between East Forest and the roundabout. I'm going to recommend to the board that we don't need to take any action on this unless you wish to, but I think we need to postpone that until next year because the budget estimate that was given us by the engineer is, rounding it up, is $363,000 to mill that and to resurface it.
Are we gonna put that out on contract? Or
Yes, because Mike said it's too large of an area for our paver to handle. It's too many passes. So we're going to hold that off till next year, and we'll put that in next year's budget. And we'll have funds in the liquid fuels fund. April of next year, I project we'll have about $750,000 in liquid fuels funds, so we'll have funds available to do it.
It's just,
don't have it.
would you quickly explain what the liquid fuel fund is? So
Yeah, liquid fuels fund is allocation that we receive from the state, and every time you go to the pumps and you put gas in, there's a certain amount of tax that gets funneled back to the municipalities in Pennsylvania to help with their local roads. So it doesn't all go to the state just for state roads.
thanks, Todd.
So we get that annually. This year we received $300,000. And the same with some of these culvert projects. You know, they're 90, 48,000, and 67,000, and some of them are pretty large pipes. Again, we're going to postpone construction until next year, but Davidson's are going to get all the paperwork together and get the permits so that we're ready to go early next spring.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I have for you here, and we don't need to talk about this, but this is a copy of the 2014 audit. What I could read is no findings.
This is a liquid fuel fund audit.
No, this is our
Our township, the
township law.
the general fund.
Yeah, all funds.
So,
So you can take that home, study it if you have any questions.
but it appears the report is favorable.
Yes, I didn't see any findings in my reading, and they didn't talk to me about it, so.
And we're going to talk about the liquid fuel review by the state.
We don't need to, you can if you want to.
I just want to mention one thing. But having read it, it doesn't start out by saying you're in compliance, congratulations, whatever. It's just, it goes on and on and on. And so I couldn't see anywhere where they said that we have any deficiency, but at the same time, it doesn't really report loud and clear what our status is.
If they have any findings, it actually is titled findings, that page, and there are none in there.
If they do have findings, they found that our account is in order.
Well,
I mean, why don't
That's
they,
good news.
why don't they say that?
yeah, but what they call a finding is something they're not happy with.
Yeah, well, anyway.
So,
Okay.
they didn't have any of the liquid fuels on it either, so.
You're finished with your report?
I am.
The next report.
The sanitary sewer report.
That's part of his report. No, it's not separate. Sanitary sewer, that's all.
Yeah, there are two items that we need to address this evening. As you recall, we received $200,000 in total, two separate grants for Sisson Phase 3 sewer project. The grant for, let me see what year that was for. The 2013 grant was $100,000. You have before you an amendatory contract to reduce that by $88,160. And then we also will have a contract that we'll vote on later, which is a new contract for $88,160. And what they're doing is the county has funds that go back several years, excess funds, and let's see what years those are. They have excess funds kind of hanging around from 2006, 2009, and 2011. And the county wants to use those funds up so they can close those contract years. So that's why it's the same amount of money, it's just going to be different contracts. So the first one that we need action on is to approve the amendatory contract to decrease the funds by $88,160.88.
Is there a motion to that effect? I'll make the motion to approve that.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, and then the next contract we need authorization on and approval is a new contract, which is for $88,160.88.
Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So that's 300,000 for phase 3?
No, it's still 200.
Oh, so it's only 200. So you haven't gotten 200,000 plus 100, you only have 100.
No, we had two separate contracts on 2 separate years. Each was 100,000.
Right.
The one contract is still in place for 100,000.
Okay.
This contract from 2013, they're reducing it
And then putting it back
and
together.
then putting it back together with older funds.
So
So it's still a total of 200.
total 200, not 300.
Correct.
The township was mandated by the state, that is, to go into 4 different areas of the township where there are malfunctioning septic systems, and Syson Sewer, which is just about complete now, is the 4th and final area, I'm happy to say.
The other thing, if I can just add regarding Syson Phase 3, we have some people that are anxious to get connected. So I'm going to send out notices that outlines what the steps are and the criteria, but let them know that they're not mandated at this point, because we have not passed an ordinance mandating it, and we don't know what the final costs are. But also, I doubt that too many will do it, because also once they voluntarily hook up, they'll also start paying the sewer bill at Glenrock Sewer Authority. So they want to do that. So, and the other thing is, they're going to, on Monday, the contractor's going to come in and start to do the restoration work.
It's a good time of year to do that, it's a good time of year to plant trees and grass. All right, that's your report.
Yes.
Attorney Buck, your report.
I did not submit a report. I'm happy to tell you that I didn't have anything to report to the board.
That's good news.
Usually it is.
Thank you. You have a copy of the zoning officer's report. You have a copy of the maintenance report, the engineer report, and the planning commission minutes in your packet.
Can we go back to the maintenance?
Yes.
Can I just ask you one question? What did Barry Taylor, did he respond to your, did he come up with what he wanted?
No, he never got back. He
So-
never responded to that.
Yeah,
back.
okay.
I don't know anything from him. And he was in here regarding a permit for a project for someone, and he didn't say anything, so.
You want to talk about the?
Can I go back to the maintenance regarding, I emailed everyone, regarding the skid steer. This is the same thing I emailed to you earlier today. Our maintenance foreman, Mike McLean, approached me yesterday, and he finally completed his homework on the purchase of a skid steer loader. We do have $60,000 budgeted in our liquid fuels fund for equipment, and the skid steer loader was one of the items to purchase. In addition, it's getting prices on just a plow. But at this point, asking the board to authorize the purchase of a JCB 260 skid steer loader, which comes with a bucket and forks, an angle broom, as well as the sweeper collector to get all the dirt, stone, gravel, etc. And that's under state contract, so it would not be required to be bid for public bids. and the total price is $55,675.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
I vote aye.
Is there any discussion? All right. Aye.
Aye.
Mike says thank you.
Pardon?
Mike says thank you.
Yeah. Well, you know, our road crew, all our equipment is paid for, and they take very good care of it. It's most of it is fairly new, somewhat new at least. So, and you all know what a skid steer is. It's one of those, it either has wheels or track on it, and a big bucket. All kinds of attachments can go on to it. So it'll be put to very good use. You want to back up any further? And the engineer's report, I mean, it speaks for itself, I believe. And the planning commission will have their minutes for your review. Supervisor comments, Bill?
No comment at this time.
Sue?
No comment.
We get out and we get out of the township a little bit, and I'm dumbfounded by the amount of litter, particularly like at exit 4. It's a sad commentary that we have all that litter there. And, I
Oh,
don't
we
know
just had a complaint on that.
what we can do about it.
Oh, that was at Walmart, wasn't it?
We sent a letter to Walmart, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already sent letters. And regarding exit 4, usually twice a year we have York County Prison Labor come out and clean that up, and they're scheduled for April 20th.
Good, that's good. But everyone should know that even though you didn't litter along the road in front of your property, you're still responsible to clean it up. And the next item is, there are a few properties, or maybe more than a few, which are unkempt, an embarrassment to the, and a detriment to the neighbors and anybody else that lives in that area. And, there's something we can do about it. I mean, now they're going to say that I'm using this, I'm using this, I'm using that. It's valuable to me. It may have sat in that thing spot for 10 years and never used. Is there a way we can, without going door to door, just if there's a real problem, the neighbors are complaining, we can refer them to an ordinance or to somebody that
You
can.
file a complaint.
But there's no
Just
regulation.
file a complaint.
I know.
Neighbors can file complaints, township can bring it to the attention of the zoning officer, and that's his job, is to.
We have to have regulations.
That's correct.
How far can we go?
What do you want to regulate?
Well, if somebody has material all over their property, or at least part of their property, that just sits there year in, year out, they're gonna say, well, I need that, it's of use.
What type of material?
Well, I see tanks, I see old clotheslines, I see boxes, I see boards. Want to go on a list? I mean,
No, you're in charge. If you're upset about it, make a complaint.
Enforcement is always a delicate matter, of course, Mr. Solomon. And as you're pointing out yourself, one man's trash, another man's treasure.
yeah,
The zoning officer can only go on the regulations that he has in
that's
his
what I'm saying.
do his best to enforce it.
And there's no regulation against hoarding. Unless you're going to get on TV and get our hoarders.
However, if you have a condition that rises to the level of what your zoning officer feels is a detriment to health, welfare, safety of the municipality, it's his authority and his job to act.
That's very vague.
It is-
Isn't there an ordinance by some ingenious township that would deal with somebody whose property is unkempt? And just by, you know, am I right in saying that you can't take action if they say, well, I'll need that tank someday, or I'll need this or that someday, and that's where it's gonna stay?
Depends on the detail of your ordinance, of course. It's the same old story, the balance between regulation and property rights, and the enforcement authority of the municipality and the rights of the citizens to use their properties.
How many more pages do we want to add to the ordinances we already have? We already have books listed.
All right, well, I was over in Bavaria a few years ago, and everything was neat and tidy. I asked one gentleman, I said, well, how do you keep everybody in line? How's everything kept so neat and tidy? He said, we don't let them. They must have an ordinance over there. So, all right, well, I don't see a lot of interest in proceeding, in pursuing that, so let's move on. Old business. Green Infrastructure Action Plan. Jeff Shu is here.
Do you want me to come up to the mic, or do you want me to?
Whatever you think is gonna be, must be.
Well,
Where's best?
We're gonna have a, hopefully Todd can help me out with the PowerPoint that might be helpful. I will come up here so we can look at it together.
They have.
Okay, great. So if you'll remember, a couple months ago, you allowed for, yeah, thanks. You allowed for us to move forward on what we were calling a green action plan. And what we want to do today is walk through findings of that. I think it'll be helpful to go through it. I listed on this first page a little information about what it is, and really what it is something that we started in the city of York as an attempt to try to take all the actions that they had. They initially started with what they called plans into action because they had so many plans and none of them were enacted in any way. So they looked at those and they tried to figure out what's action items that they could take from previous planning efforts. And from that, we kind of gleaned out the environmental aspects that came out of that, and we put into place what we call a green action plan. From that, I've taken that and tried to work with some of my other clients, you being one of them, to use the same process, because we have regulations that are coming your way that are going to require you to deal with some of this stuff. So as I said on the slide, you know, a couple things to note. We were trying to find conclusions that would draw us to a place where you find the opportunities and allow you to be poised to be able to go after grant money when it comes available. We've already used it for one occasion already. Lastly, I think when we talk about your official map, which is very helpful in dealing with development, the official map really can use some of these findings to be incorporated back in and make it a little more of a dynamic tool for you all.
So, would you explain what an official map is for those who may not know?
Official map is somewhere between your zoning ordinance and your wish list, is the best way I can describe it. It allows for you to define areas and projects that you might anticipate wanting to do in the future, and essentially allow yourself to tag properties with those intentions. So if a development comes in, you have 1 year to negotiate with the developer of that property to acquire the property. For example, a good example would be if you have a road project that you want to extend a road through a project, you could show that road footprint on the official map, which is a map of your entire township. And that will allow you, if someone comes in with a development, to negotiate with the developer for that right of way.
Thank you.
And you have a 1 year period to do that. Okay? Doesn't mean you get it for free. It means you have the ability to purchase it. So again, this slide will show you that what we tried to do was take this action and get you to essentially environmental projects within the township and try to figure out how they work together. And it goes a little beyond environmental, and we'll talk about that. And I listed some things there, and I won't read it to you, but I believe from representing you for a while, I understand some of the things that I believe are substantial or sustainability that you've kind of projected in a lot of things you've done. So that guided us as well as we went through this process. Okay. So what we found was a couple things with the township that were, I think, worthy of note. The first is, I can't think of another township, whether it be York County or anywhere, that has basically 4 boroughs that are part and parcel to the township and embedded within there. As you guys know, the actions they take, you don't control, and your actions, they don't control. So you gotta have to be partners on this. And we'll talk about why I think the location of those boroughs and the fact that they exist is important for you all. Okay? It's important to understand that basically you have a very unique position in York County and in Baltimore relative to water sources. What you have right now is 4 public providers that have their origins for their water within your township. York Water Source, which flows into Fedoris Creek, starts basically in the boroughs and runs through your ag land and ultimately through Glen Rock. Similarly, Deer Creek provides a lot of the water for the Baltimore area. and you have well protection heads that you have in your zoning ordinance, which are outlined up there. So I think it's important to understand that almost none of your township doesn't contribute to a water source that is used by the public.
We have little falls down here in the southwest corner, and then we have the East Branch of Cadores in the northeast corner. And every bit of water that falls on our township is potentially a public water supply. It is a public water supply.
Correct. Agreed. So there was a couple other things that were worth noting. I thought it was interesting that again, the blue line that is heavy on here, see if I can show it. So it starts up here at the top, runs down through, and runs through the township, and really divides the township into a drainage area that goes to the west, and then one that goes to the east and south. That blue line represents the drainage divide. And what's interesting, and I've shown it on there as an oval, is that basically all your urban and very densely populated areas are the headwaters for those two watersheds, which is relevant because you don't really want that to be the case. You would rather that it started in a non-urbanized area because you're giving it a bad start. In the beginning it gets concentrated, and then it does a bunch of things, and that's what I wanted to talk about for the next two slides. So I just talked about that, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So the area to the west is going through Glen Rock, and it's, again, worthy of noting that what you're starting with is these urbanized areas up in here that flow to the west. These urbanized areas create stormwater, and we hope that the boroughs and also in your areas of dense development are controlled properly, and we have regulations in place. They have regulations in place that hopefully do that. And then we see stream degradation at times through this area, largely agricultural land in your township, and ultimately all the impacts go to Glen Rock. We have flooding and or sedimentation loads. Okay. On the other side, on the east side, what we note is that the areas that are shown as arrows, which are one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, really represent how basically 83 represents almost a damming effect to all that flow that's coming out again of urbanized areas and then goes to the Deer Creek watershed. It gives you opportunities, but it also kind of produces these concentrated flows. Okay. And the last piece that I just think worthy of when you look at your township and the watersheds that lie in it, you have a couple significant existing corridors, and you have one that we're proposing and have been talking about for a long time. Everyone's familiar with the York Heritage Rail Trail. The other one, the Stewartstown Railroad, is pointed out up there, which goes west to east, or east to west. And then we show also what we've been talking about for a while, the Elm Street bypass. I note those because railroads tend to follow streams, and these do. So when you're talking about environmental issues, when you look at these kind of corridors, they're real opportunities. York County took advantage of the Heritage Rail Trail as a both recreational as well as a stormwater improvement kind of attribute, and I think we have the same opportunity in the Stewartstown Railroad at some point in the future. Elm Street is a completely different animal, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. Go ahead. So what we came away with, and I thank you for kind of allowing me to go through that, because we did that evaluation, and then we went through the evaluation of pulling together. You'll see on the right-hand side, it's very small on this screen, it's small on your sheet, but what it identifies is an inventory of all of what I feel would be relevant when you're looking at a study like this. It talks about all the parks you have, all the stormwater basins you have. We listed subdivisions, we listed schools, and other open land, and again, we talked about trails and corridors. And what we found, jumping to the bottom line conclusion, is that we found three areas that we believed were worth focusing on because there was a lot of clustering of benefits that could be had. Area A, Area B, and Area C. And that's what we'll talk a little bit about. So go ahead to the next slide. Area focus area A, we're referring to as I refer to as the 851 corridor improvements. This is including the areas upland, which would be, this is that drainage divide that we talked about that runs through the township. You have the old Kmart facility, which is now a church. You have the Walmart facility here. which exists. And with these facilities, everything being on the west side of 83, they all have what I would consider to be ineffective stormwater basins that really could be retrofitted. You don't have to acquire any more land, but you could use the basins to have a much greater impact a much greater impact on the stormwater that comes off these huge parking lots, and as we said, kind of does what we don't want to do, which is introduces the flow coming off of a really bad thing as the upper end. And then after it flows through there, this is one of those points where it crosses under Route 30 or Route 83 and gives you a concentrated flow, but it also gives you an opportunity because now you have the stream that runs down along A51 and it actually represents the municipal boundary line between you and Hopewell. And as you guys know, will be developed in the back, actually in the back here, as Johnston controls. And that we know that that's coming. So I think this is, again, one more reason that if you do this kind of planning, you can see things in advance and maybe we can work together. We show a bunch of things on here, and what I just mentioned earlier in the night, we just went after a grant from funds that are available through Exelon and are being made available through York County Conservation District. We went after a grant for $65,000, and that would allow for some of the vegetation that is non-native to be removed from largely this area and this area down and through here, replanting of some appropriate vegetation, and also, in my opinion, very importantly, retrofitting and making useful some of these basins that are dealing with this urbanized or very highly impervious areas. So the other thing that we looked at when we did this was not just the environmental, but we also looked at the idea that while you're doing environmental work, you can a lot of times partner with recreational opportunities. So what you can basically do is look at this red line here and the one coming up. This is Elm Street bypass that we have on the charts as a potential improvement. Could represent some kind of recreational trail and be worked into any kind of wetland mitigation planning. So we saw that as a big kind of a linear area that has a lot of opportunity for improvement. Go ahead, next one. Second one I refer to as the Miller Park Elm Street bypass connections. This one's, I think, pretty neat in that it allows for the possibility, again, think about your township, Heritage Rail Trail over here, and actually does connect to the Stewartstown Railroad on two different legs. And then there could be a trail that would be brought up through to Miller Park. And from Miller Park, there's a greenway, if you will, that exists that you could develop that would run along through, this being the Lutheran Home, thank you, Lutheran Home. We would look at the possibility in the future, if you were to try to go for grants or whatever, you could create an underpass here on the Susquehanna Trail right next to the existing piping for the stream. And then that trail would run up through. It would connect things like Strawberry Fields, Forest Lakes development, and some other communities. And again, what you're doing is you're tying into what would be that Elm Street bypass project. So theoretically, you could really create improvements here. We talked about improvements to the Miller Park, right here, the Miller Park Basin, that we've been talking about since I started with you guys. And that retrofit of that basin is also included in the Exelon grant that we just went after. So what I see here is a huge opportunity that's kind of a linear improvement to the township, where you would take the ability to create all the residential land that you have here and tie it to a couple different recreational uses that would make sense and create these kind of non-motorized pathway connections. Again, over a long period of time, we don't expect how this would happen, but we think it's important to lay this out so that when we have opportunities for grants, now you have exhibits that can go along with the grant application that lay it all out in terms of what it would be and how it makes sense. And that's what I find, that's what grant reviewers are looking for. We want to understand how it fits into the picture and you've done your homework ahead of time. And the last one, I'll be brief on this, but I think we talked a lot about ag preservation, and you have a lot of regulations about ag preservation. It's interesting to me that if you think about this area, because everything we just talked about was basically on this side that's going to drain to the east. To the west, as I said, you basically have ag land over here, but you have the impact on Glenrock. And I think if you wanted to try to start to focus in a real kind of targeted manner, you could look at what I've drawn in here as an oval as being a sub-watershed that we could try to do some innovative things. For example, you work with farmers to make sure their conservation plans are up to date and that they're exactly what we would hope they would be, and document that well so that they become kind of the prototype for where you expand that into other areas of your ag. Because what I find is a lot of times the agricultural land, while they're required to be in a conservation plan, in many cases they're not, or the conservation plans aren't implemented. So, what's that?
Yes, Dan.
Go ahead. So, just wrap this up really quickly. The official map is what, we talked about all those plans, the focus area A, B, and C. I think if you agree, I think I'd like to see that they be included as additional items in your official map, because it puts it on the charts so that you can keep track of it, and as development comes in, you can try to take advantage of development and make some of this real. We already talked about preparing for the funding. It's already, I think, paid dividends in its first application, and will continue to do so if you choose to go after grants. And then I think that what it does is it allows you to show some of the public, what you're trying to do as a township, that sustainable kind of activities that you promote. It allows you to understand why they're important. For example, ag preservation has a lot of benefits. The one that I think this shows is the benefit it has to Glenrock Borough in reducing the flooding potential in a borough that's downstream from you. And it's part of the requirements that you have, trying to control land use so that you can control the infrastructure improvements that you need to make in the future. I think that's all I have. If you have questions, I'll try to answer.
Any questions? Thank you very much for your
Oh,
work.
I failed to mention that this was a collaborative effort between, you'll see the logo on there, Land Studies and we are completely independent companies, but we figured out a long time ago that it made sense to try to work with Land Studies because they bring a high level of expertise in some of these areas, and we like partnering because we kind of look at things through different lenses. I understand what you guys do as municipalities, they understand the environmental side of it, and when we partner together, we can produce stuff like this.
Land Studies is a firm that is founded or existed in Lancaster County, in Lidditz, and they're very highly thought of. And they work with Jeff and provided all this work. And we provided $6,000, a little bit more than that last year to do this work. Thank you for your work, Jeff. Any questions from anybody in the audience? Do you need any action from us tonight?
I guess the only action would be if you want to, I think the next step would be to try to get this into your official map. I can work with Todd to try to make that happen. And then any other feedback you have as to what you liked or didn't like, we certainly want to make sure that that's reflected in any official map changes.
Do you want a motion to that effect?
Yeah, if everyone's comfortable with what they've seen tonight and are ready to have that incorporated, I think we should do it by motion.
I think you'll just give us a draft initially, so we'll be able to take a look
Yeah,
at
the
it.
official act, yes.
And then we'll go on from there. Is there a motion to expand the official map to include what's been laid out before us here tonight? I'll make that motion that we allow the official map to be enhanced or extended. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
I didn't hear you good, Paul.
I'm sorry, aye. I'm sorry, Jim. Okay, thanks for your work. Under new business,
If I can.
you want to start that, yeah?
Yeah, I emailed the board shortly after our last meeting, and I did receive a favorable response from the majority of the board. I think tonight we should just vote on to make it formal and official. But we're scheduling a public hearing to go over the revised zoning ordinance amendments It's not a lot of them, but it's a result of the input we had from the last public hearing, as well as comments from the York County Planning Commission, and thought it's probably a better idea to have it as a separate independent meeting and evening versus trying to squeeze it in before a board meeting. So I did, based on the responses I got from the majority of the board members, I did advertise it in the newsletter for Wednesday, April 29th, so you can formally vote on that. I
Is there a
appreciate it.
motion to accept that date for hearing?
I'll make a motion that we accept the April 29th, 7 PM meeting here for the revised zoning amendments.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. So you want to go on down that list of new business?
Yeah, I can, sure. Next two items, I put those on there for you to vote on together if you're okay with that. Again, this is a formality that we seem to do about every other month. Often has to do with the subdivision land development plan or just a building permit based on the amount of area that's being disturbed. But it's two operation and maintenance agreements for stormwater.
How big was Burns?
And it's, pardon?
How big was Burns?
I don't have the plan in front of me, I don't know
The
offhand.
riding range, right?
Yeah, it's right.
Do you know how much money they spent?
They didn't share that.
No.
Oh, no, I'm not saying.
Well, then you
No, no.
should have
But
brought
I'm
it
just
up.
saying,
You bring it up and then you won't tell us.
someone else mentioned to me that our stormwater management ordinance was rather detailed in things, and it was from another attorney. But, and then someone mentioned to me how much that these people had to spend on stormwater management to put in a riding arena. I don't know how big it was, that's why I asked the question.
At least the size of a football
It's
field.
big.
Well, it's an outdoor riding arena,
Yeah.
yeah. It's something you guys might want to look at next
Well,
year.
if I can comment on
Yeah,
that.
please.
Yeah.
Your ordinance is the same ordinance that the county mandated the model ordinance that you comply with.
Oh, I understand that, yeah, I know. But I understand from what somebody was saying to me, that other townships, such as Cadorus and others, did not adopt that. So it's not mandatory, right?
It is mandatory.
So they adopted it?
If there are municipalities that changed it or did not modify the model, and they're not in compliance with the requirements, you are in compliance, but there are other townships that have deviated from that requirement. I agree.
Okay. I was just trying to clarify.
Maybe since you brought it up, Sue, is this being, you say it's rather expensive, and we don't need to know the price, it's a private matter, but is it expensive because of the way they did it or because of the ordinance?
Because of all the stormwater issues, I believe, right?
Well,
I guess I can only respond to that to say the ordinance is the same ordinances that everywhere else.
Mhm.
And the cost of doing it is related to the engineer that they hire. So.
And probably the size and the location too, right?
And also, this particular case, they came through, they were permitted, they had all their approvals, and then they decided to make changes, so they had to go through the process a second time.
Okay.
So,
I'm sure the Burmans, they do things right, I mean, they
Yeah,
do
I
things
just
first
was-
class, I think that may be a factor in why it costs so much. Given the fact that they did it.
Stormwater is the most expensive part of developing anymore. And that's the way it is. Everything you do,
Yeah.
it's just huge.
One last thing, if I could, last week on Wednesday, there was a public hearing or a public meeting, York County Planning offered. They're looking at a regional, actually a countywide stormwater authority and looking at whether there's merit in that. It was very well attended, 65 people, I was there, 65 people, made up of almost all of York County was represented in some fashion. And there was a lot of builders there that were saying that across the board, it isn't just you guys, stormwater, as was mentioned, it's a major expense right now.
Yeah.
It's also a regulated, required expense. It's regulated by the federal government through the state and down to you, and unfortunately, you get to implement that.
Yeah, I had heard those comments, and I just wanted to clarify so that I knew, in case anybody else was wondering.
Sure, thanks. Todd, you want to proceed?
So anyway, if the board's okay with it, if you want to make a motion to approve both stormwater O&M agreements, which is for Berman at 1724 Oakwood Road and Butcher at 41 Commerce Drive.
We have the, you recommending we approve these? Jeff? Just making sure. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion to approve those stormwater management facilities. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Next item we've talked about over the course of probably the last year. We're now at the point for the park improvements at Windy Hill Park, Winchester Park, and Hangtown Park. And we are now ready to put those out for bid, those projects. So asking for authorization from the board to place those ads. And it probably will be 2 to 3 weeks till it gets actually advertised, because we're waiting on final approval from DCNR, which we received grant money from. The 3 projects total $300,000 actually, all 3 of them. $240,000 of that is for Windy Hill and Winchester Parks, of which 50% we received grant funding from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So we're getting $120,000 in grants, and we're matching it at $120,000. And then for Hangtown Park, that's a $60,000 project. $30,000 of that is township funds, which are matched by $30,000 from the York County Commissioners. Our Marcellus Shale funding, the Act 13 funds. So those funds are what's paid for that particular project.
What's the third one? Oh, Windy Hill is with the other one?
Windy Hill, Winchester.
The township.
Okay, I got you.
And you're not only providing new equipment or updated equipment, safer equipment, but also doing landscaping and some other things as well.
Correct, yes. Mainly at Hangtown is addition of some additional play equipment for the top lot and handicap accessibility to the top lot, as well as out to the soccer field. At Windy Hill Park, we're putting in a bleacher seating wall at the one ball field, which is more in the northwest corner of the park, directly behind the 83 West area. Also will include expansion of the trails, top lot, a youth lot, some bleachers, and some landscaping. And then at Winchester Park, if anyone's familiar with that, that's just a really small community park. There's, I guess you would call it a full-size basketball court. It's going to be a half court, then it's going to be walking path, benches, handicap parking, and a top lot. And the equipment at that playground is in really bad repair.
Yes.
So that'll basically be a one part when it's completed, but it's a small part.
On Winchester Park, they're going to put in a really nice basketball bank court, and sometimes they have these fan-shaped, they're cheap metal, and you can't bank your shots off too well. So you're going to guarantee us we're going to get a very attractive. It's going to be inviting. Some of these kids, when you have a real good setup there, they'll want to play there, as compared to something that's rather marginal.
When I say it's a community park, it is open to anyone, it's open to the general public. It's just that it's tucked away in a housing development. It's not very large.
No, Miller Park is 22 acres, I believe. It was developed about 10 years ago, largely paid for and developed by grant money. And it doesn't have a top lot on it. It has an older plan, and I talked to Todd about that. That plan probably needs to be updated a little bit. It's got a couple skating rink fields, or what do they call it? It needs to be, I'm trying to get some, do we need to update that plan?
Oh, you're talking, it shows 2 inline skating courts, I guess they call them. But inline skating, everyone knows it is rollerblading. I don't know that too many people do that anymore these days. So there are some things that we could probably update that plan.
So So what's the sense of the board? I mean, if we can do that. Todd, you mentioned we get somebody from the state.
Well, what I would suggest is, if we want to consider applying for additional grant next year, is let me meet with the rep from BCNR, show her our existing plan, and I met with her last time before we applied, and she was the one that gave some recommendations as to what she felt we should focus on the most. So I think it'd be important probably to talk to her first, get some feedback and some direction, and then come back to the board. And,
That makes sense.
yeah.
But we're going to be extending the parking, which is part of the plan.
Correct, we had that in the budget.
And
And that's just going to be stoned parking lot for 2015.
But one thing we talked about, and make sure the board's up to date with this, we're talking about putting a trail in. Right now, we have a square asphalt trail, which is being used quite a bit, but it's not a very attractive trail. But we're talking about putting a trail from the extended parking lot through the woods, along Strawberry Road, and back down and connect with the existing trail system, and as well as coming back to the parking lot. And we can do it all with our own crew. I just wonder whether anybody hear any thoughts on that. They're going to be up there extending the parking lot, and it'll be part of that work.
What do we usually spend every year on renovating our parks? $150,000 out of our budget seems like a lot, but I mean, I know we're getting grants for another 150, but what
Well,
do we usually
in
spend?
the last 4 years, we budgeted $5,000 and haven't spent it. So you spread that 150 over 4 years. You know, when you have the number of parks we have, it's not, and I don't know when the last renovations were done before that. They're just the 4 years I'm aware of, so.
We've been paying an average of $1 per 18 to 24 inch native tree or shrub, and now some of them are up 6 to 8 feet. So there's been a savings there. So I think we've been very frugal with our expenditures on the parks. All right, enough said. Any other comments? So we are okay with Todd meeting with the state and went over some ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just need a first, second, and a vote then on authorizing us to advertise the park projects for bid.
I'll make a motion, we authorize the advertisement for bids on the park improvements.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Todd.
Okay, next item, the septic repair agreement. And again, I emailed this to you. I gave you a sample in your packet on Friday. This is a property that's located at 18043 Fielding Court in Freedom. It's a property that had been foreclosed on, is in ownership by the bank, and we had, I don't know if anyone remembers this, on the Glen Rock Road about 2 years ago, we did the very same thing. Our ordinance requires that before a property is transferred, septic needs to be inspected, and if there's any malfunctions or any failings, they need to be repaired and signed off by our sewage enforcement officer before that transfer can take place. In this particular case, the bank refuses to put any more money into the property. This gentleman is interested in buying the property. He's read the agreement. He's okay with it. Basically what it states is that we would waive that requirement for the work to be done until he is the owner. And it states in here that he cannot occupy it, and we will not issue any certificate of occupancy until the work is completed.
Fair enough.
So he's okay with it?
He's okay with that, yes.
I'm sure he probably negotiated his price.
Yes, it's a short sale.
I'll make a motion we approve this agreement. The second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item, I had a request. I received a telephone call from Ben Wetzel, who's a member of the Glen Rock Borough Council. And if everyone's familiar with their Glen Rock Park, which is at the top of the hill there by the cemeteries, the park is actually situated in Shrewsbury Township, but it's a borough park. They have pretty large parking lot up there. I think the majority of it's paved. They have a smaller section that's stone. And they would like to have that paved. And they had asked me if the township would be willing to, lack of a better term, donate labor and equipment, which Mike estimates to be 2 to 2.5 days, to do the actual paving for that park. They would pay for all of the materials. And I told them that I would need to get approval from the board for that. So I don't know if board members have any feelings on that one way or the other.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that motion. Well, a lot of our own citizens are residents.
Right, because there's a lot of ball games and so forth.
Yeah, I've used it already, that's why.
So we should support it. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is for the on-lot septic disposal system program. As you know, we require septic tanks to be pumped every 4 years. This gentleman is requesting a waiver, and I would just like it to be formal so we can put it in the record book. It's located at 12927 Glen Valley Road. Some of you may have known it earlier as Joe Ross property. The buildings have been removed for, Jeff, you may know, it's been quite a few years.
It's a couple of years now.
And so the point is, he got his notice, and there's no buildings. There is a septic system still there, but there's no buildings, and it hasn't been used in the last 4 years. So I would just like the board to formally waive his requirements, and with the understanding that, of course, when they go to build again, Keith will have to do an inspection. If the septic fails, they'll have to install a new system.
And I have to make, as it said, we have to take steps to make sure the old system is properly.
Correct. And if not, we'll have to install a new system.
Is there a motion?
That's a new system there now.
Is it? Okay.
You want, is it, with your motion?
I'll make a motion to.
I'll second the motion for waiver.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Next item is a trash waiver request for 13094 Rental Road.
No one's living there apparently.
Correct.
If no one's living there, and assuming there's no garbage put out or recycling necessary, I'll make the motion to approve this waiver.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aaron's one of our long-term farmers, isn't he? Aaron, he's used to farm President Grant.
At one time, he had Bowser Place and farmers.
All right. Well, we talked a few days ago, talked about getting approval to mow the grass with a little bit of the top of the berm at the DAC development.
Well, I think we should wait until next month until we have a letter of agreement worked out and then present it to the board.
All right.
On our septic pumping ordinance, I thought we gave them 1 year to get it done, not 2.
No, it states to
2 years, is that what our ordinance says? Okay. That's a long
the year that it's
Starts.
due and then the prior year.
Right,
So
or
like
the
this-
following year.
The prior. So if it's due, District 4 is due December 31st of 2015. So they could have it pumped anytime in 2014 or 2015.
So they have 2 years to get it done, so to speak?
Yes.
We have a requirement that the septic system can be pumped and inspected every 4 years. And we have 4 different areas of the township, so it rotates. And this is done so we don't have malfunctioning septic systems, don't have to extend public sewer. You go to a very high cost to make that happen, so. It costs about $150 to have your tank cleaned and inspected, somewhere around there. 200? 200, all right. Correspondence, we have nothing.
Not other than what was in your packet.
Okay. Well, the public, you all have heard a lot of discussion up here and a lot of decisions were made, so now it's your chance to jump in and provide us with any thoughts you might have. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all for coming.
No, I feel so bad for my boys that come up here short.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're fine.
I know.
April 20th.
But we can still